Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. My name is Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, announced the successes of the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the south of the country. Meanwhile, world leaders and foreign media comment on the treacherous Russian attack on Odessa, which took place less than a day after the signing of the agreement on the export of Ukrainian grain. The armed forces of Ukraine have launched a counteroffensive in the south of the country and have already taken control of several localities. Today, we can see the fruit of our actions so far. Victory is near. First of all, we can now speak of the Kherson Oblast. The occupiers are trying to establish a bridgehead there. Collaborators with them made many brazen statements that were without coverage. But did it help them? Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces are gradually liberating the region. Russian troops are still firing at Ukrainian cities, but not all missiles reach their target. Representatives of various nations are fighting on the Ukrainian side. The media reported the death of 2 Americans, a Canadian and a Swede. Yesterday evening, the news came about the death of a Pole, an MMA fighter. It is with great sadness that we received the information about the death of Tomek, who as a Polish volunteer fought in the International Defense Legion of Ukraine and died there. Tomek took part and won the 2nd MMA Championships organizing Gliwice. Rest in peace. The Kremlin is lost in lies. Yesterday, the Russians, despite the agreement signed in Istanbul, fired on the port in Odessa. At first, Moscow did not admit to this attack. Today, however, the spokeswoman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Maria Zakharova, informed that Russian forces had destroyed a military ship in Odessa. With a precise blow, the Caliber missiles destroyed the military infrastructure of the port in Odessa, sending a Ukrainian military ship to the address beloved by the Kiev regime. Yesterday's scandalous attack on Odessa was commented on by Turkey, which together with the UN contributed to the signing of the grain export agreement. We are very concerned about the fact that such an incident happened immediately after the agreement we had prepared on the transport of grain was concluded. However, we continue to fulfill our obligations under the agreement, and in our meetings we also made it clear that we are working calmly and patiently with the parties of the conflict. The United States has strongly condemned this attack. It undermines the effort to bring food to the hungry and the credibility of Russia's commitments to the deal finalized yesterday to allow Ukrainian exports. Ukrainian soldiers are being trained in Great Britain. One of such places was visited by the resigning Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who recalled the scale of British aid for Ukrainians.
I've been meeting some of the 400 Ukrainian troops who are here being trained by our forces, getting ready to go and fight in Ukraine. That's part of a huge commitment we've made to train Ukrainian forces. We want to train about 10,000 of them over the next 4 months.
358 children have died in Ukraine since the beginning of the war. The Russians destroyed over 2,000 educational institutions and 127 hospitals. The representatives of law and justice are touring the country. Peace chairman Jarosław Kaczyński announced that the main goals of the party were to constantly defend Poland's sovereignty, the dignity of its inhabitants, and build a strong nation. He pointed out that in the upcoming elections, the party wants to achieve victory so that it can exercise power on its own without having to enter into coalitions. During yesterday's meeting with the inhabitants of Poznań, the president of Law and Justice, Jarosław Kaczyński, announced new solutions in the party's program and the continuation of pro-social policy, adding that a serious victory would be needed in the next elections. If we win the elections, remember that it must be a serious victory, because it is not easy to find allies. Then we will do everything to reverse these negative processes in these 4 years. Today, during the meeting in Gniezno, the president of Law and Justice emphasized that despite many difficult situations, our country will be able to cope with, for example, attempts to dominate Poland by the European Union. In Poland, some respond to the situation of readiness to submit to some kind of humility and self-limitation of their own ambitions. The second, that is us, we say no, we do not agree to it. We want to be a strong and serious country. According to Marek Sawicki from PSL, making a tour of Poland resembling an election campaign is now unnecessary, although all opposition parties meet with voters during the holiday season. Today, the rulers should solve important problems that concern Poles, and most of all, have teams and make decisions. There are also acts of aggression to which Donald Tusk, the leader of the Civic Platform, recently called for. He will not be the president of the National Bank of Poland a day longer. It would take a lot less doubt to get him out of the National Bank of Poland, and I will do it. I guarantee it to you. He promises to lead him out. That's not quite how I imagine it. What did he have in mind? Some strong people will come and convince him that he is not the president of the National Bank of Poland. Yesterday, in the town of Kurnik, a group of people shouted profanity towards the president of the Law and Justice Party and participants of the meeting, identical to those of the black marches organized by the so-called women's strike. Marek Suski, MP of Law and Justice, has no doubts that such behavior is inspired by the opposition leaders. The fact is that there is one very aggressive party in Poland, headed by a leader speaking with a German accent, calling for people who are elected in democratic procedures to be forcibly removed from office by strong people. On the other hand, publicist Piotr Semka points out that the leaders of the ruling party need contact not only with voters, but also with party activists in order to learn about the mood and the party structures. I saw Prime Minister Morawiecki, who also answered sharp questions, so I do not know what the admission criterion is there. For Kaczyński or Morawiecki, this is a campaign for everything. The politicians of the ruling party feel the need to explain to citizens the reasons for the rise in prices and inflation. We have inflation, high fuel prices, rising heating costs, already visible for the next few months. The columnist Krzysztof Karnkowski adds that in the face of the growing aggression on the other side of the political scene, the electorate may additionally motivate itself to the election fight next year. On the one hand, they hear Kaczyński, and on the other hand, they see that the alternative consists of such aggressive groups that simply have nothing to give but insults, and also some violence, for now still moderate, but which is intensifying against these people. Here the fight will be very serious, and it is still worth taking this fight. The closest constitutional election date is next fall. Earlier today, Pope Francis departed Rome's Fiumicino airport for his apostolic visit to Canada, where he is expected to apologize for the abuses many faced as children at Catholic-run residential schools. Francis, who will be the first pope in nearly 20 years to visit Canada, said last Sunday that he was making a pilgrimage of penance to help heal the wrongs done to the indigenous people by Roman Catholic priests and nuns who ran abusive residential schools linked to deaths of thousands of children. The July 24th to July 30th trip will include at least 5 encounters with Native people, as Francis makes good on a promise to apologize on their home territory for the Church's role in the state-sanctioned schools, which sought to erase indigenous cultures. About 150,000 children were taken from their homes. Many were subjected to abuse, rape, and malnutrition in what the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2015 called cultural genocide. The schools were at the center of discussions between the Pope and indigenous people at the Vatican in March and April. The 85-year-old Pope will visit Edmonton, Maskwacis, Lac Ste. Anne, Quebec, and Iqaluit in Canada's Arctic territory. He is scheduled to deliver 9 homilies and participate in 2 masses. And finally, a diver and environmental activist made an exceptional discovery when he located the sinking site of a Roman ship that is thought to have sunk some 2,000 years ago, uncovering the cargo of the ship. Using his cartographic GPS, Fabio Maraciera, a history professor and archaeology lover, found several hundred tiles and objects under the sand and hidden among the rocks off the coast of Taranto, in the southern region of Apulia. The data collected by Maraciera were then analyzed by archaeologists who confirmed the theory of the sinking of a ship that can be traced back to the Imperial Roman period between the 1st and 4th centuries AD. According to archaeologists, the ship's cargo was presumably used for the renovation of some coastal villas, as the Taranto coastline was dotted by rustic villas and farms with luxurious private residences by the sea. During his dive, Maraciera also found an iron anchor with a fracture in the spindle, suggesting that before sinking, the ship was in great distress, probably due to a violent swell that pushed it towards the coast. The coastal villas were generally owned by rich or influential people and were equipped with reception rooms decorated with mosaics, porticos, spa facilities, servants' quarters, and cisterns for water supply. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But from me, it's have a wonderful evening.